Hey, what's up everybody? It is me, Faith, or Faith, whichever you prefer to call me, and this is my mess of a room, and if you can't tell, I am super hyper because I cannot sleep, and I got off a call, and I am still in a very talkative mood. So we're gonna be doing a video. I know I haven't uploaded in a while. I've had to go prom dress shopping. If you do not hear my printer in the background, it's because I just printed out a script, so we're gonna get this shit done. So why am I making a video that seems so stupid as this? I left the horror community, I left the narration community, so why am I doing this video? Well, it is because I simply had to do it, because I have huge criticisms when it comes to not only the narration community, but the horror community online. While I am someone who is part of the horror fandom, I do not necessarily like associating myself of that community on YouTube, because I have seen just so much fucking drama come out of it. So I'm going to start by criticizing these specific creepypastas, because I also used to be pretty big into the creepypasta fandom. And because there has been shit that has been recently released about a certain narrator that I've actually had interactions with, but I'm not going to talk about that. That is going to be a long video. I might make it into 2 parts because there is a lot to uncover. So let's start out with something a bit more lighthearted and shoot the shit a bit. So again, I was a very stupid kid when I was into the creepypasta fandom. I was at least, I can't remember when Slender Man came out, but I remember when he did, and I remember that, I can't remember exactly the year and what age I would have been, but I do remember being significantly younger and, well, enjoying it. I was very much into the creepypasta ideas. I was one of those stupid kids, though, that also thought that sonic.exe was a well-written story. Yes, I was that stupid as a kid. And I will be damned if there will be any other kids that are as stupid as I was. Now, I think one of the main issues that comes to these stories is that it is almost impossible to make things like this scary. When you see Sonic the Hedgehog, at least if you see like the 8-bit version of him, it is very hard to consider that something like that could be, well, scary. There is no real way to make something that contains nostalgia, especially when it comes to something as innocent as, well, fucking Sonic the Hedgehog or Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants. It is very, very hard to convey that into something terrifying. I think this is because that they already have a pre-existing image that has been built up in the childhood of many other people, and because of this, we have this innocent outlook on those characters. Well, you might say something like, hashtag this ruined my childhood. We are not necessarily saying that it did ruin our childhood. Our childhood was relatively built up on these characters, and thus it doesn't necessarily affect us. Now, why I might be still scared to some children, I think, is because they still view these characters as not necessarily real, but it has been more prevalent in their lives at such an age. Not only are you building on somebody else's work that they had created to not be scary, thus making it even harder to pertain to that feeling of terror, you are also making it seem as if it is a joke. Nobody really believes stuff like this happens, and so it becomes less believable, which in turn makes it less scary. Now, this is when we bring up things that do work, such as Candle Cove. Candle Cove is one of my personal favorite creepypastas because it does in fact work as a story, while it is still considered a lost episode creepypasta. The difference is Candle Cove was a completely original idea that took place in an internet forum format. Now, you could also look at my old reading of it, which I'll link somewhere. But in case of stories like that, it does work. The reason it works, again, is because it is its own original work that has been portrayed to be mysterious and somewhat scary. Of course, it is hard to achieve such an effect if you say you took my Stitch plushie over there and said that he had blood coming out of his eyes. I would not be scared because I'd assume somebody drew fucking red Sharpie on him. And any logical adult would. Another thing about these stories is most of the time they are written by kids. The kids who are trying to basically be edgy and try to make something that they see as cute and innocent into something scary. We've seen this again with multiple stories and multiple fandoms. There are lots of Sonic creepypastas, many Mario creepypastas, and people are basically trying to take these things that they heard as children, most likely from their parents, and turning them into something scary as a way to kind of rebel. Now, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe they just want to make a creepy story, but they don't necessarily have the ideas to do so, so they take from other people's works and try to morph it into something that could be scary. But ultimately, it leads to the outcome of not working, whereas again, Candle Cove did. Now, this is coming from someone who was a huge fan of SpongeBob, and this is more pertaining to the Squidward suicide thing. I could not find it scary to eat because I have been watching it my whole childhood. There were actually scary moments in SpongeBob, don't get me wrong, that did scare me as a child. But ultimately, as I grew up, I did not have those thoughts anymore. And just to kind of prove how much of a SpongeBob fan I was when I was a child, when I was 3 years old, my father had hid an Easter egg of SpongeBob SquarePants in the tree. I legitimately launched at this tree screaming, "Pumbob, Pumbob, give me Pumbob," because I couldn't say SpongeBob. So that's always been a meme in my family, is me saying Plumbob. Or not Plumbob, Pumbob. Plumbob is in Sims. And even then, I didn't necessarily find that to be scary, to think that Squidward would kill himself. Now let me bring it back around to Candle Cove, because I think it is a perfect example of how to do something like this genre in a good way. The reason I think people think that these lost episode creepypastas like Squidward's suicide or Sonic the Hedgehog is because they think, but my childhood character doing bad things, and thus it creates this illusion that it equals horror because childhood and then being turned bad. Now, one of the biggest issues I think, not only as in these stories, but particularly just as a beginning writer, because a lot of the people who write these stories are beginning horror writers, is the overusage of gore. Tip: if you are going to be a horror writer, gore does not equal horror. It doesn't create necessarily suspense, it creates shock. I do not think shock is necessarily the same as horror. It is like saying that jump scares are horror. Jump scares can be used, I think, in horror movies, and I think gore can be used in horror movies, but to assume that gore equals horror and horror equals gore is not true. And again, gore can be used in horror, but again, it is not the thing that equals such a thing. So that's something I notice. It usually makes them just seem so ridiculous, you know, though, like, specifically, like, say, the Squidward suicide one, they include, like, oh, we saw pictures of dead children, then we saw Squidward shoot himself and spread his brains everywhere, you know, or the hyper-realistic eyes, stuff like that. It very much shows how new they are to writing, because they think this is going to create shock, shock equaling horror, horror equaling achieving the goal of their story. But those are just my opinions. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It would make my day. If you have any comments, like, do you agree with any of my opinions? What are your takes on lost episodes / gaming creepypastas? Anything like that, leave them in the comments down below. I will also be linking my TeeSpring. Don't forget, February's designs are here. They're gonna be all here. I'm showing each and every one of them. That will be in the description down below. I also have a link on my channel. 100% of the profits of the Black History Month designs will be going directly to the Civil Rights Museum. Quick little add-on to put, if you use code MERCH, M3RCH, you will be able to get 10% off any order of any TeeSpring products, so use that in my merch shop. I will leave it down below. Check it out. And if you like content like this, go ahead and subscribe it, because that would make my day. And as always, I'll see you all later. That's lame. I'm gonna cut that out. I apologize in advance.